So, if you've only been following me more recently, you might not know that I actually kind of started off on TikTok on the gardening and homesteading side of TikTok. And I did have a sweet little homestead that I struggled to get going up in the hills. And one day I will be able to go back to it, and you'll get more homesteading content probably, just because. But I really want to thank each and every one of you, because your support is what is going to help me get back home, like, immensely. Y'all don't even understand. Even just, $5 a month is really making a huge difference. It's a piece of wood to build a cabin with, But anyways, I did really just want to say thank you, and we're going to talk about moon magic, because whenever I kind of blew up on TikTok, it was because I was talking, one about Wives' Tales and two, about the Farmer's Almanac, and now you have Savannah. So, let's get back to my roots a little bit, and I want to kind of dive into living by the moon with y'all. Okay? So, first of all, let's talk, before we even get into the signs, and I did a kind of a quick video on what each, sorry guys, what each sign governs in your body. Before we even get to the signs, we really have to talk about moon phases, because a lot of the older folks would argue that her phases are just as important as the sign that she's in. So the moon's lunar cycle, 28 days long, and each phase is better for specific things. Even if you can't follow the exact sign, like the signs are just really too difficult to keep track of, I get it. You might not have the book, you might not be able to pull it out and know right off the top of your head. You can walk outside and look at the moon and see what phase she's in and try to kind of judge based off of that. If you can get the phase and the sign exactly right, woo! Your garden, it'll be the best garden you've ever had. Like, almost guarantee it, as long as you're not doing some weird stuff and, Anyway, so sometimes you can only pick one. If you can only pick one, it's easier to remember the phases. So the first phase we're going to talk about is doing things in the old of the moon. The old timers would say it's the old of the moon right now. So the old of the moon starts at the full moon, and it's the waning phase. So from the full moon until the new moon, she's waning, she's growing dark, she's old. This is the ideal time for planting anything root crops, potatoes, garlic, onions, carrots, etc. It's also great for tulips, specifically tulips, bulbs, all the bulbs. Anything that is growing like from a bulb, from the root, you're wanting to plant that when the moon is old. But please also, you can't just like throw bulbs in the ground at any time of the year. You do still need to know your growing zone. And if you don't know your growing zone and you're like trying to start a garden or something, please feel free to reach out to me. I would absolutely love to help you with gardening. I love it. It's a hobby. It's a passion. The full moon is a great time for fishing. The fish are always biting during a full moon, barring a storm or anything like that. The last quarter of a waning moon is a great time for cutting wood, because the wood is at its driest. The moisture's gone all the way down to the roots. It's believed that a full moon, especially when it's a full moon in an air sign, is the best time for harvesting cannabis, if you're into that. I've only done it like once, and it was an experiment. It was not great. Harvest your root crops as well during a waning moon. Harvest fruit during a waning moon. Harvest your fruit during a waning moon. You should set your fence posts during a waning moon. Yes, even setting fence posts has a specific moon sign. They won't get loose. You set it during a waning moon, it's not going to get as loose. You set it during a growing moon, it's going to get all shifty around. You're going to have to refill dirt in. Go try it. If you want to slow hair growth, yes, there are specific signs that are best, but also the moon phase, waning moon. If you're doing construction like me, if you're building a cabin in the hills, trying to move into it, nail down any shingles, any boards, any that kind of thing that you're kind of wanting them to stay put, you're wanting to do that during a waning moon as well. If you're more into homesteading and you're growing your own food, you're raising animals for eating, slaughtering animals is also done in the last quarter of the moon. From the old of the moon, we finally hit the new moon. And the old timers would say the new of the moon. We go from the old of the moon to the new of the moon. So from the day after the new moon until the full moon, while the moon is waxing, this is the best time, moon phase, for planting any above ground crops. Your lettuces, your annual flowers, your tomatoes and cucumbers, any annual crops, anything above ground, do it during the waxing moon. The day before, the day of, and the day after a new moon is an excellent, excellent time for quitting old habits. Traditionally, by like Appalachian lore, you wanting to break a bad habit, do it around the new moon or do it when the sun is right. If you want to collect seeds from your crops, you're going to be seed saving, again, homesteading stuff. If you're going to be seed saving, plant those crops between the second quarter and the full moon. If you want your hair to grow faster, yes, there is a sign, but cut it during a waxing moon phase as well. Now, if we're talking about magic, and we're kind of separating it from the more folklore and that sort of thing, the typical practices, full moons are when we cleanse. It's when we release. It's when we are banishing. That's that kind of spell work, that kind of energy that we're working with a full moon. Your new moon is the best for manifestations. If you think about it, it makes sense. We go from the dark, in this dark place, and then she grows. And so we're wanting to manifest things, we're wanting to birth things, we're in that dark place, and then we're just going to watch it grow. So manifestations, definitely any kind of spell work that has to do with that, we're going to do it around a new moon. The dark moon specifically, when the moon is completely dark, you cannot see her at all. That, if you're not doing any work at all, is a good time for rest. But if you do want to do some work, it's a great time for shadow work. But it's also a really good time where if you need to deal with somebody, you need to handle some attacks been coming your way, anger, dark moon. Throw it right back. So recap, anytime we're waxing, we're increasing, the moon is in her newest phase, we're growing, then we want our spell work to focus on growth, on increase, anything we're wanting more of. We're going to cast those workings during the waxing phase. Decrease is the name of the game for the waning phase. Anything we need to have less of, we need to get rid of, we need to cleanse, we need, to just cut people off, cut things off, change habits. We're going to do that kind of spell work while the moon is waning, while she's getting smaller. All right, so that is working with the moon with her phases. Next, before we jump into what to do in each specific sign, we're going to talk about the elements and the energies, what those are, what their significances are, and how they relate to each individual sign and how that kind of influences things as well. All right. Love you, bye.